Today we are looking at the red deck and the red cards that you should be playing. What is up, Pistol Nation? We are going to look at red cards today. We're going to rank the red cards. What red cards should you be playing? And which red cards should you kind of stay away from? We're going to jump right into this. There's a lot of red cards. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 different red cards. I'm just going to go in no particular order. We're just going to go over them, and then I'm going to tell you whether they're good or not, or personally what I think. The first thing we have is the Sheave Dragon. I can't say the first one. I don't know how to read. Sorry. Its rarity is rare. I love this card. Melee AoE attacks enemy air and ground units. And it has a special ability where it greatly increases attack when it's been moving for a set duration. So you want to throw it in the backfield. Definitely think if you're running red, you should have this in your deck. It is a little bit costly at 7, but it puts out such good AoE damage for both air and ground units. But highly recommend if you're running any type of red variation, whether you're running strictly red or red with another color, I highly recommend the Dragon. Dragon's very good. Next, we have the Star of Extinction. Inflicts AoE damage, pushes enemies within range by dropping a Star of Extinction. I personally am not a fan of this card. I think it's a bit costly at 5. I feel like if you wanted to have an AoE spell, the Ratchet Bomb does pretty much the same thing if you have it leveled up high, though. I will say that. There is a bit of a difference, right? Because this is 2 mana cheaper, and this is 5 mana, and it does a lot more damage, don't get me wrong. And I just don't really like this card personally.
Just because we have the Dragon as our AoE damage dealer.
So we really don't, I feel like we really don't need that at 5 cost mana. It's just not too, you know what I mean? So I would say the Dragon is like by far one of the best. Top 1, 2, or 3. You definitely need to have the Dragon. The Star is, I would say it's in a little bit of a lower half. I would say maybe 7 or 8. It's a viable option, but I just personally don't think it's really worth it. Next, we have the Hell Rider. Melee attacks buildings only, jumps, and does AoE ground damage and stun. Very good card. Definitely highly suggest if you're running red, you have the Hell Rider in your lineup. Very, very good card. He's basically your damage to the buildings. He's going to run straight to the buildings. He goes pretty fast. He jumps, and he just beats the hell out of the enemy's guardians, and that's what you need, right? That's how you win the game. Highly suggest the Hell Rider. Very good card. Another top card. I would put him with the Dragon as like necessary.
Next we have is the Goblin Artillery.
I love this card too. This is like the #1 troll card, I feel like, in this game. Ranged attacks only buildings, but the range is very long. I mean, this guy, he like snipes the guardians. I mean, the buildings, he's super, super far away, and he could just be like, do. And if your opponent doesn't address him quick enough, he could put some serious damage out. This is another one that I really love. I love the Goblin. That's another one in my top 3. I highly suggest you run the Goblin. Very, very good card. Next, we have the
Ash Cloud Phoenix.
Range attacks enemy units, turns into an egg when it dies, and then it has a chance to hatch from the egg, and another one comes out. This is another very good card. Very annoying for your opponent, because not only do they have to deal with the monster, and it only costs 3, which I think is pretty good. Pretty good cheap card. But then after it dies, right, they're going to have to deal with that egg. If they don't address that egg, you're getting another free 3 mana monster out, and then he can come back alive again, and then he can come back alive again. I really like this card. If your opponent doesn't address it, they can get screwed. Like, it's a pretty good card for only 3 mana. I like it. I would say this is probably my 4th or 5th pick. Next we have is the Phoenix Nest. Pretty much goes hand in hand with the Ash Cloud Phoenix. What this does is it's just a building that you place, and it summons the eggs over time. And then as the eggs hatch, the Phoenix comes out. I personally do not like this card. I think it's way way too costly at 8. It costs 8 mana. Our max mana that you can have at once is 10. So you basically have to have almost full mana just to summon this building. And your opponent can, if your opponent addresses it quick enough, they can pretty much just take it out. And you'll only probably get maybe 1 out of it. So you got to figure, this is going to cost you 8. And this Ash Cloud Phoenix costs 3. In order for you to even get enough value, you're going to have to summon 3 of these. If you drop this building and you don't get 3 eggs out of it, like that fully hatch, and get like the monster out on the field, you just wasted mana. That's the bad thing. Like, I don't like that about this card, is if you don't get 3 fully hatched eggs out of it, then you're losing mana. It's a complete waste of mana. I do not suggest this Phoenix Nest at all. This is probably like way low. I would say I would definitely really not play this card at all. I would put it in the trash can. Next we have the Vexing Devil. Vexing Devil I really like. He does some AoE damage. There's 2 of them. They just jump and suicide. The only bad thing is that they do self-destruct. So once, you know, they do the damage and then that's it. You don't have a body on the field. And I am so, like, I push it. So important that you have a body on the field. Spending mana and not having an actual physical monster on the field is such a disadvantage, right? Like, why spend 5 mana on a spell when you could spend 5 mana on a monster that's going to be on the field and that has the potential to generate tons of damage to the guardians, your opponent's guardians, and to kill your opponent's monsters. It is cheap though. It is only 2. So that's pretty good about it. It's good decent AoE damage, but it just, they die, right? So you have to remember that. I like them
just because they're cheap,
but they also can get killed from far away, and then it's a complete waste of 2 mana. If your opponent has like the Blinding Mage or something that has really long range, they could just get sniped and you don't even get any value from it. That's one thing that's kind of scary about them. I would say, again, I would place them in like the 7 or 8 category out of the 14 or 13 that we had. It's a pretty good card. It's about in between. It's not towards like the better half of the cards, but it's also not like the worst of the worst cards. We got this one, the Comet Storm. Randomly drops comets on guardians to damage them. The number increases as the mana spent. We have the X. So if you don't know what the X means, it basically means you decide how much mana you want to spend on it. I really don't personally like this card. You just use it to drop some comets, and it just, you know, does a little bit of damage on the guardians. So and look, like as you level it up, it really doesn't go up that much. I really don't suggest this at all. Again, like I would rather have a body out on the field instead of just dropping, you know, 150, 160, you know, depending on how high you have it leveled up. It's not enough damage to, it's just, I don't know. I don't really like it. I'd rather have a monster. I would say this one is pretty bad. I don't really like this at all. I will put this way at the bottom at like 12 or 13 or 11. Like, it's definitely in the bottom half. I don't recommend the Comet Storm. Kind of crappy card. Next, we're going to go look at the Shock. Inflicts damage to enemy units with range and stuns. So what I like about this card is I like the stun. The stun is very good. 2-second stun is very good. Not so much the damage. The damage is like, the damage is okay. You got to really level it up to really see anything, to even see an effect from the damage. But the stun is really good. So if not for anything, the 3 mana just to get a 2-second stun off is pretty good. I would say that this card is personally, again, this is in between. I personally, when I use it, I don't really have too much luck with it. When I was using this card, I was kind of like, I would rather have a monster out there for 3 mana. I wasn't getting enough value from it. So it depends on your play style, really. But I personally don't recommend the Shock. I think it's one of the underrated, like one of the worst cards out of like the top half. I would say this is probably like 9 or 10. That's not too good. I don't really like it. Next, we have the sentinel, which is basically a building. Summons a building that melee attacks enemy units, surrounds enemy grounds. Enemy ground units will receive damage passively as they're around it, and it also does damage. So we'll watch this. So as you see, it does this little like melee attack thing, and there's like fireballs come out. But then as they get closer, they take damage over time from the fire. This is a very, very good defensive building. I think if you want to go for a more defensive build, like for red or something, then this is a really good card. It's situational. I would say this is in the better half of the red cards, though. I would put this at maybe a 7 or an 8. It's not that bad, but it's also situational, right? Like if you want to have a defensive building style of play, then this is a really good card. It's definitely not a bad card for only 4 mana. Next we have is the Fury Blade Vampire. Attack speed increases each time a single target is attacked. The effect can be stacked up to 5 times. Once it reaches 5 stacks, the effect will remain as long as the target stays alive or the attack is reset by a status effect. So it increases attack. It only melees ground units. Attack speed will increase. Right now it shows you 1.1 seconds. So pretty much it can stack up pretty good. This is very, very good. As you can see, it's very good for taking out enemy units that are going straight for the guardians, and they won't pay any attention to the unit. So that's what it's pretty much used for. It's very good for taking down like the tanks that are going to ignore the unit and just keep walking past it. This is also 4 mana is not too bad. This is in between. You might get good usage out of it. I don't really like it too much. Me personally, I haven't had good luck with it, but you could try it out and see if you could find a build that it works with. It's not a bad card. I mean, as you level it up, the attack will increase a bit and the HP will increase. It's very weak to like a group of enemies. If your opponent summons even just like 2 cards, you know, if it's going up against 2 monsters, it's gonna get wrecked. This is really like a tank killer. So we have the
Swashbuckler.
I think this card is pretty interesting. Range attacks enemy air and ground units by firing a piercing arrow. The piercing arrow is pretty good if they're stacked up. As you can see, they have to be stacked up for you to really get that value. You see? So it depends on how you drop him and how your opponent's troops, you know, gather up on the battlefield. So he can basically be AoE damage. And what's good is he does air and ground units. He only costs 4. His attack is pretty good for what it is. His HP very low though. HP is very low, so you got to summon him in the back. I like the penetrating effect, but again, he's in between. I would say he's not one of the bad cards, but he's not also one of the better cards. He's in between. I suggest you try him out and see what it is. This is like a tryout card, right? I would say try this card out and see if you get any luck with it. Because some people are going to have luck with it and like this card, while I feel like other people are going to try it and they're going to be like, oh, this card's trash. Because this one can be really good if your opponent is like swarming a lot and they have all their units stacked up. Because you just have an AoE damage dealer just shooting them like crazy. That's one thing that red has, is red has a lot of AoE damage. You know, red has the dragon, they have the vexing devils, they have so much AoE damage. This is kind of like AoE damage. Then they got their own little star spell. There's a lot of AoE damage in red. I think that's why red is really good, because AoE damage is very important. We have the Inferno Giant. Melee attacks enemy ground units, inflicts AoE damage. Again, AoE damage. The nearby enemy ground and air units upon his death. Big single target guy. He does single target damage. He's huge. His HP is really, really high. Swings the club. Very weak to multiple enemy units, though. He will die to enemy units like crazy. If you have a swarm of stuff on him, like some beetles, like see how if you swarm him, he's gonna go down like a
Sack of potatoes.
But then he does do this little bam, so he will take them with it. It's pretty good. For 6 mana, he's a little bit expensive, but he's pretty good. The only thing I don't like about him is he's really slow. he's really, really slow, and your opponent's going to see that, and it's going to address him. Like, there's ways to play around him, but he can be pretty good depending on how you play it, like, play him and the play style you have, like, with the build. You could definitely build a red deck around the Inferno Giant, and you can get good value out of him. I would say he's one of the better cards out of the red deck. So I would say the Dragon, 1, 2, 3, 4. I like the Swashbuckler and the Vexing Dragons over here. And this is also pretty good. I would say I would stay away from the Comet Storm, the Shock, and the Fury Blade Vampires. I don't really like the Fury Blade Vampire. I don't like the Star either. The Inferno Giant is also pretty good. You could put him in there. But I also really don't like the Phoenix Next. Stay away from the Phoenix Next. But I hope y'all enjoyed this video. Pistol Whip. That like button if you enjoyed this video. Hit that subscribe button for more Manastrike content and mobile gaming and vlogs and all that good stuff. And I will see y'all in the next video. We're going to look at, what are we going to look at next?